Rwby is very much style over substance, and not only is that okay, it's a good thing.
In the specific case of Rwby, at any rate.
Before I really get into why that is, I want to clarify terms. Style is visuals, presentation, and approach. Style and visual flair can elevate and improve otherwise cliched or shallow stories and characters. Substance covers ideas, values, and methodology. A substantive work can get away with a flat presentation or uninspired visuals. Most things use a combination of the two, but oftentimes favor one over the other. Rwby is the brainchild of the late great Monty Ohm, who developed the setting and characters with fellow Rooster Teeth members Kerry Shawcross and Miles Luna. The team drew inspiration from numerous anime, games, kung fu movies, mythologies, fairy tales, and lots of stuff, really. Kerry lists both Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and Grimm's Fairy Tales as inspiration.
Probably not the originals, rife as they were with murder and cannibalism.
I also have to imagine Monty's favorite anime, Gurren Lagann, played a significant role in developing the series' style and tone. Now, if you want to see the original prototypes for Rwby, check out Monty's Dead Fantasy and Haloid. Anyway, the final distillation of all these elements was a series that, despite a low budget and some conspicuous flaws, still had spectacular strengths. Fast-paced action scenes set to a killer soundtrack, recognizable characters, and that trademarked Rooster Teeth sense of humor. Now, all of these are instantly recognizable, engaging, and traits of style. Whereas the show's weaknesses in world-building, plot, and character development you can only see after we have a clear idea of where all of this was going. Let's break it down one element at a time, starting with style. In my humble opinion, Rwby's #1 strength is action. Whether it's throwing down with the cannon fodder creatures of Grimm, or one of the show's many bad guys, regular action beats are Rwby's lifeblood. These are the moments where every character gets to strut his or her stuff, including powers, the series' staple multifunction weapons, and even the magic of cooperation. The action scenes are also supported by the show's soundtrack, making every fight a performance.
So it's like pro wrestling.
And the rule of cool is always enforced. How much abuse an aura can take, how much ammunition anyone can carry, what exactly are the limits of everybody's semblance. Rwby isn't concerned with that, as much as making sure the fights flow in time with the music, and everyone gets to strike a sizzle reel pose for later conversion into posters and action figures.
How toyetic can you get?
Toyetic is a word created by marketing people. It means an object or device featured in a cartoon that could easily become a mass-produced toy.
Now, McFarlane Toys wouldn't have much to work with if they didn't have characters worth showing off. The designs for most of the main cast are striking and memorable, due in no small part to one of Rwby's other themes, color. After all, red, white, black, and yellow. The 4 members of Team Rwby are instantly recognizable, even in silhouette. Don't underestimate the power of a striking, memorable design. It helps the character and story stay in the viewer's mind. Likewise, Team Juniper is distinctive. Pink is the perfect color for the fun and bubbly Nora. The occasional splash of purple helps Ren's otherwise understated design stand out. Pyrrha and Jean, on the other hand, are distinctive on the basis of theme. Pyrrha would look right at home on one of those Greek vases.
Vase.
And Jean is a future fantasy knight in shining armor. Finally, let's look at the bad guys, starting with the best bad guy, Roman Torchwick. Sure, he's Dennis the Menace by way of Alex from A Clockwork Orange, but his stylized look, distinctive cane weapon, and Silver Age of Comics level evil mean he works as a villain in a way that Tyrion, Hazel, Baron von Mustache III, and Cinder really don't. The last point on style I want to go over is theme. I don't think it's a good idea to constantly remind your audience of other movies, shows, comics, or what have you. But it works in Rwby because Spot the Reference is a fun game to play, and it's meant to feel like a fan product. In a good way, because so many of the characters, especially the title characters, are pulled from fairy tales. And that whole milieu, the idea of the four maidens and how arch and fantasy-like it felt, really worked and felt like it belonged. Whereas the explanation we get about Ozpin's torrid romance with Salem, the Brothers Grimm, and mass human extinction from Jin the Magic Plot Device really feels clunky and like it doesn't belong. On that note, I'd like to dive into the substance of Rwby, starting with world building. We're going to begin by looking at a character I seem to be at odds with the fandom over, Cinder. She's dropped down on my list of favorites as the series has gone along, but in the beginning, Cindy was pretty dope. One of my favorite things about her were her more arcane uses for dust, specifically the dust-infused clothing she wore. Her use of glass as a weapon was also cool, but sadly none of that is brought up anymore 'cause maiden powers. Likewise, with the exception of Hazel, there are very few interesting dust users. You could argue that everyone is using dust ammunition, but Weiss is the only one who gets any particular effect out of it. Dust is a cool aspect of the world of Remnant that just isn't dealt with enough. As the series went along, there was a sort of magic versus technology thing developing, with Ozpin and Salem representing the ancient magic aspect of the world. So dust and semblances had to be made less magical. Now this leads to an obvious question that Rwby doesn't have an answer for that I've ever seen. What is the difference between the supernatural aspects of a semblance and the magic of Salem and Ozpin? Finally, let's talk about the Grimm.
Least threatening monsters ever.
I'm not going to hold the fact that the Grimm are basically cannon fodder against Rwby. They're cool looking with their black and white color scheme, and it's neat to see the heroes fight a new Grimm variant from time to time. But their impact on society doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Grimm are attracted to negative emotions, and they're really dangerous, so how has society adapted to that fact? Do sad movies just not exist in Remnant? Are conditions like depression treated with banishment? Are happy pills as easy to get a hold of as candy?
That would explain Nora.
Every once in a while they do a good job acknowledging it, like Oz telling Ironwood that his big fat army will only make Grimm attacks more likely. Now onto the plot. Is it just me, or is everyone kind of winging it? Oz doesn't know how to stop the Wicked Witch of the West.
Come on, even Hellboy 2019 figured this out. Make with the dismemberment.
So he's gathering the relics to do something. Also, Salem wants the relics, and I'm really not clear on that one. Won't the relics bring back the gods and maybe cause the end of the world? A world she kind of rules when you think about it? The ending of the last season highly implies that she's going to go toss Atlas's salad with her army of flying monkeys. She could just come out of hiding and say to all four kingdoms, "Hi, I'm Salem. 2 things you need to know. 1, I'm unkillable. 2, I have a big monster army. Now go build some giant statues in my honor. And if you see my ex-boyfriend, break his legs." At the moment, it looks like the series finale of Rwby will involve Little Red Riding Hood sweet-talking the Brothers Grimm into giving us all a deus ex machina. 'Cause how else could they possibly end it?
Private, enough ranting. Summarize.
I don't know what the bad guy wants, and all I have are some weird hints from an old man living in a little boy's head. And that's just the main plot. I'm not even gonna touch the unresolved side plots. It's not a hard and fast rule, but in general, success comes from knowing who you are and what you're trying to do.
To paraphrase Sun Tzu, know your enemy and know yourself, and you will never know defeat.
Wasn't he in Jade Empire?
Please, stop being embarrassing.
I was and still am a fan of Rwby, and all I want is for the show to be as awesome as I know it can be. Rwby isn't Game of Thrones, and honestly, by Season 8, Game of Thrones isn't Game of Thrones. Lore, world building, and magic systems all exist in Rwby to serve as cool characters in over-the-top outfits with crazy weapons punching monsters. That's not a bad thing. That's what the fans love. Now, if you're interested in more reviews of anime, movies, TV shows, comic books, or video games, check out my channel right here on YouTube and find my Facebook and Deviantart pages for video updates and more. Thank you for watching.
Hey kids, today's show is brought to you by the letter 4 and the number potato! I'm a stupid private.